From the news capital of the world, you've landed on The Daily Objective. I'm Jonathan Hoenig from capitalistpig.com. So delighted to see our global audience of students of objectivism already filing into the chat, not just the chat, but the super chat. We are domiciled in the jolly old England, as you know, also called the UK, I'm told, but we are supported by contributions from people just like you, traders who enjoy our programming. You know, we are the largest producer of objectivist-related programming, not just in the world, but in history. The Ayn Rand Center UK brings you literally a daily show schedule of not just people who've heard of Ayn Rand, but people who are experts in Ayn Rand on everything from corporations to politics to metaphysics, epistemology, and even shows from people like Harry Binswanger, who knew Miss Rand, and many others. So we're happy to have you here for a show that probably hits home a little bit to our audience who might be interested in something like this. This is cold hard cash, and how what's going on now is, well, it's basically destroying that cash, ripping it up to smaller and smaller little pieces. So we've got a great show inspired by Miss Rand today. Show us you appreciate what we're doing by hitting us up on the super chat, and more importantly, becoming a member. So let's get started. And we always want to say this is not officially a part of objectivism. It's not endorsed by Dr. Binswanger or Miss Rand, of course, but we're students of objectivism, all learning together. And as I give this presentation now about inflation, market's down about 600 points, at least here in the US. So it's very, as they say, ripped from the headlines, considering what impact inflation is having on not just Wall Street, but on everyday Americans, certainly here in the US, and I think all around the globe. Now, for the authoritative voice and source of everything objectivist related on inflation, Ms. Rand has a wonderful speech and then essay. The essay, both are called Egalitarianism and Inflation. It's from a 1974 lecture. It's available online for free. It's a 28-minute period. It's an hour-long speech with a half-an-hour Q&A period, and then it's available in printed form in Ayn Rand Philosophy, who needs it as well. Super, super recommended. And most of what we're going to excerpt today and speak of today is either from that speech or from the Ayn Rand letter. So let's just get started by saying, well, what, and thank you, Christopher Smith, Canadian dollars, worth a little bit less every day, but we gladly accept them. And more than anything, love you as being part of our community, our philosophy posse. Let's start by, as they say, defining our terms. Quoting now Miss Rand, inflation is defined in the dictionary as undue expansion or increase in the currency of a country, especially by issuing the paper money not redeemable in specie, Random House Dictionary. It is interesting to note that the word inflated is defined as distended with air or gas swollen. So an undue expansion or an increase of the currency of a country by issuing paper money not redeemable in gold. Well, have we had that in the US? Have we had that globally? Let's take a look just in the US, and there's some wonderful visualizations helpful in this kind of a context from USA Today. And this was 2021, just how that trillions and trillions of dollars. They show this very, I think, telling illustration. As you can see on the top, that's 1 million. The big gray box on the bottom, that gray space, that's $1 billion. So to illustrate just how much COVID relief, how much, as Ms. Rand alluded to, that money printing, not redeemable in gold or silver, went on. Look at this actual visualization of, those are blocks of $1 billion piled up across the period of March 2020 to March 2021. $5+ trillion, and that's the Statue of Liberty on the left-hand side, just for scale. So we're talking about piles and piles of billions of dollars literally soaring into the sky. That's what was printed and pumped into the economy. And that's not just here in the US. Globally, it's been estimates of up to $9 trillion in fiscal support. I wish they'd put that in quotes. And that's exactly what happened. And Miss Rand, I don't want to say she foresaw it, but she describes it perfectly. It's the expansion of a country's currency, which incidentally cannot be perpetrated by private citizens, only by the government, consists of palming off as values a stream of paper backed by nothing but promises or hot air, and getting actual values, the citizens' goods or services, in return until the country's wealth is drained. And when you think about this, the stream of paper backed by nothing but promises, think about all the promises made because of, justifying all the COVID spending. This is from supposedly reputable policy organizations. Robust COVID relief achieved historic gains against poverty and hardship, bolstered economy. It's like, is that such a, it's such, I'll let it speak for itself. I think anyone's, achieving anything now, given the inflation that's hurting the most people on the lowest end of the income spectrum more than anything. Here was Biden's economic advisor promising us that all that COVID stimulus won't overheat the economy. This is back of March of last year. Now we have inflation at 40+ year highs. So it was all papered over with all these promises of all the wonderful things, and people are blaming this on Biden, I think very appropriately. Thank you, Wes. Wes Stewart. I'm going to raise a glass to Wes Stewart right now. Wes, I'll raise a glass to you. It's not a pint, but thank you for your very generous contribution, Wes Stewart, part of our philosophy posse, and helping us keep this on the air, keeping an objectivist-related content out there, spreading it in the culture, and hopefully helping you learn something along the way. Thank you, Wes. Really, really appreciate it. So Trump, I'm just saying, also was all about the COVID stimulus. He signed a historic, meaning big, $2 trillion stimulus. And in fact, when people were saying, let's just send out, here in America, we sent out checks, $1,400 checks, just sent it out. People actually gambled it away in Bitcoin or the stock market. But, Trump wanted a bigger stimulus check. So politically, I'm making the point that this is not one party has been fiscally irresponsible and the other has been, they've both been, this is a pox on all houses, truly all houses, because all houses believe in that Keynesian model that the more money you spend and print, the stronger the economy. Well, now we're seeing that there is no free lunch and reality exists, kind of paraphrase a moment from Miss Rand there. And she makes the point here, and I think this is something that we need to emphasize, is this is 100% caused by government. A similar activity in private performance, again, quoting from Ms. Rand now, is the passing of checks on a non-existent bank account. But in private performance, this is regarded as a crime, and most people understand why such an activity cannot last for long. So as I've illustrated there, it's like me printing up a check, and it's like what we used to call check kiting. You send the check and deposit it for assets that don't exist. And that's exactly what all this spending, all this money printing has created. It's been writing huge checks for which there's no actual value behind. And this is the point, is this is 100% caused by government. Inflation, again, quoting from Ms. Rand now, is not caused by the actions of private citizens, but by the government, by an artificial expansion of the money supply required to support deficit spending. Well, that's exactly what happened. This huge artificial expansion of the money supply, sending people checks. Trump wants 3,000, this one's 4,000, sending people checks. And what is now the net effect? Who's getting blamed in the popular culture? Government? No, it's corporate greed, of course. And this is where I think we as objectivists need to, we as rational people who know the truth, need to speak up and say, corporate greed, Robert Reich. I mean, what are you talking about? But this is very, very common, even some places supposedly as reputable as the Colorado Fiscal Institute. Why is inflation high? Corporate greed. Well, it reminds me of that the Milton Friedman quote with Donahue, and he says, you tell me anyone who's not greedy, something that affected corporations, it's a slur, of course. It's a package deal. This is from Vice. Don't blame inflation on stimulus checks. Blame it on corporate greed, corporate greed. But as Ms. Rand said, this is the law of supply and demand. And quote from her now, it is not to be conned. As the supply of money, of claims increases relative to the supply of tangible assets in the economy, prices must eventually rise. Thus, the earnings saved by the productive members of society lose value in terms of goods. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, this has been a year because of inflation. People are shocked. They've lost money not just in stocks and we're going to get into this in just a moment, but major money in bonds. It's people who have saved, who've done the right thing, who've been absolutely punished by this inflation. And that's what ultimately, in fact, from a financial perspective is so damning, is that it's not just things cost more, but you have less money to invest. Keep in mind, it's not consumption that fuels the economy, it's production. So the more money that bond holders lose, the more money that investors lose, the less money there is into production. And prices must rise. As Ms. Rand says, more and more money is printed, prices must rise. And of course, that's exactly what has happened. This is an article from Zero Hedge just yesterday. The analysis now is that inflation here in the US is causing American households $717 a month. And that's pre-tax. So, you're going to be making, I don't know what it is, $800 or $780 a month. So we're talking about $8,604 a year for just in inflation now that you have to kind of come up with extra just to keep your same standard of living. That's a lot of money. And especially since you think the median income in America is about $31,000, you're talking about a major hit on people's bottom lines. Thank you, P. Gupta. Thank you so much. Jonathan is on with a dose of reality. Well, it's so frustrating, and as always, there's so much to learn from what Ms. Rand wrote about and talked about. Her voice is so unusual now, so we're hopefully trying to amplify that. And thank you for helping us to do that. You are certainly part of the philosophy posse, and I'll drink to you as well. A Hapahino, I want them to be a sponsor, so I don't get a free sponsorship, but from a well-known company called Hawa. Thank you again, P. Gupta. So this is a lot of money inflation is costing everyday Americans. Even worse, Bastiat always talked about what is seen and what is unseen, the famous economist. More studies have shown that basically you're paying more and the quality of goods is going down at the same time. This has been widely covered as shrinkflation, swapping out of materials. So people's quality of lives is suffering tremendously. But no one is thinking, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have maybe I shouldn't have supported all that stimulus spending. Maybe that had something to do with it. They're blaming corporate greed and the supply chain. This is what worries me, I said a moment ago, about looking forward now, is that inflation is not just like, the dot-com bubble went up, it burst, and then the economy basically started. Now, the Fed intervened with low interest rates then, but there was new production coming in. But with this destruction of capital, the inflation that's been created by all this spending, this is what's, I think, even more worrisome from my perspective moving forward. Ms. Rand writes, invest savings or investment capital is the stock seed of industry. When a rich man lends money to others, what he lends to them is the goods which he has not consumed. And the idea is what gets the laborers there, what gets the mechanics there, what gets anyone there to work before there's any profits? Dr. Brooke has covered this extensively. It's the investor. The investor is the last person to get paid. And the investor is who's been destroyed probably more than anyone by inflation. And that's what's so frustrating, is that those evil rich guys now have much less money to actually invest and create the next series of jobs. It seems like the culture writ large believes that what we need is yet another stimulus spending bill. And if you think it can't happen, look to the Japanese economy, basically since 1990, 1991. That could be, if the ideas don't change, that could easily be the direction that we're going. This is what I will quickly get to, this idea of this destruction in the value of bonds. Now, you know anything about finance, the idea of like when interest rates go up, the prices of bonds go down. When the prices of bonds go up, interest rates go down. What of course has happened is that interest rates have gone up dramatically and the prices of bonds have gone down dramatically historically. In the last 45 years, in fact, the bonds have only fallen 5 times in the last 45 years. So, and the worst decline up until now was a 2.9% decline in 1994. So think about that. Here's an asset class. You can look back at that. Last 45 years, it's only gone down 5 times. And the worst it's ever gone down is 3%. You think, all right, this is fairly steady. Look what's going on this year. And these are a lot of indices, but they all track bonds and different bond markets. We're talking about historic losses, 14%, 16% in AAA rated US corporate bonds. And it's going to take a lot of interest payments to make up that kind of capital gain losses. 17% on AA rated paper, corporate paper, 14% on high yield bonds, agency bonds. These are government agency bonds down 8%, 7%, 21%. Just across the board, massive losses. And anyone who, as Ms. Rand talked about, was foolish enough to support this deficit spending by buying debt, by buying these bonds at government manipulated prices. So this is really what worries me moving forward, is that there's been so much tremendous wealth destruction. People are following the stock market, but they're not following this tremendous wealth destruction in bonds, meaning in interest rates and savings. And yes, inflation is terrible on consumers, but we, I think, as objectivists, know that it's production that fuels the economy. And when you annihilate savers, as they've done, there's much less wealth to create the next any company, any value, especially when government doesn't just not stop spending, but keep spending, increase spending. And this is what I hopefully wanted to emphasize today. Actually, two things. For one thing, this dollar bill is a movie prop, because I would never destroy something as ultimately holy as money. But I wanted to make the point that what we're seeing in all of our respective currencies is exactly that, this tremendous destruction of value. And Ms. Rand wrote, do not ask, therefore, for whom the bell of inflation is tolling. It tolls for you. It tolls for all of us. She writes, it is not at the destruction of a handful of the rich that inflation is aimed. The rich are mostly in the vanguard of the destroyers, but at the middle class. And that is what's so painful and so frustrating about the economic trends in the country, and so illustrative of how Ms. Rand wrote about them in the 70s so prophetically 30, 40 years ago. You make this happen. You make this show happen. You make this network happen. The Ayn Rand Center UK. We come to you completely based on your support. So go to the website, check us out in the super chat now and see the website. Click over. It's for like £5 or £10 a month. That's really nothing, especially considering you're getting hundreds and hundreds of hours of original objectivist content. Mark Pellegrino, Don Watkins, Raka Ali, international recording superstar, Harry Binswanger, James Valiant, Gene Maroney, so many great names. Dr. Brooke, I mean, all the big names on objectivism are here on this network, and we're only able to bring it to you because of every £2 at a time, £5 at a time, £8 at a time. So it really means a lot to us, and it's the only thing keeping us on the air. So don't be a freeloader, okay? Feel good about yourself that you're not stealing something, in effect, for free, and trade a value for value. If you got something out of this presentation, share it, like it, ring the bell, and throw us a couple of shekels or pounds or lira or euro, and make it happen. So we will be back here. Well, first of all, we're always here, especially on replay, but is there anything coming up? Well, stay tuned. You'll find out about it. Oh, there is. To find that out, become a member and become a subscriber. If you become a subscriber, you ring the bell. Every time there's a show on, you not only can go see it live, but you can also go know, okay, I'm going to catch that later on the replay. So Apollo, thank you for your generous contribution. It's not guilt, it is being a trader. You should feel great about yourself. You're helping to spread the ideas that you really value. And you're doing something else right now. You can't get up and profitless highs to hundreds of thousands of people. So you're enabling great, hopefully, speakers and great teachers and great motivators to help this community continue to learn and continue to thrive. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel, for the Daily Objective with one of our great stars and you. So this is Jonathan Hoenig from capitalispig.com wishing you best premises. Be well.